stepbrother erased all my business contacts. You'll never get them back. I found out, reported him for cybercrime, and got him 15 years in prison. He still sends apologies from jail. You never think your own family will destroy your life. Sure, family drama happens, we all have it, but nothing prepares you for the moment someone you thought you could trust completely screws you over. My stepbrother, Caden, wasn't just a pain in my ass, he turned out to be the reason my entire world came crashing down. And, yeah, I made sure he paid for it. Let me start from the beginning. My mom remarried when I was 29. She'd been a widow for years and met Ron through some church group. It was one of those quick courtships, she was lonely, he was charming, and before I knew it, they were walking down the aisle. I didn't have much of a say in it, and honestly, I didn't care. Ron seemed decent enough at first. He was loud, sure, and had this overbearing energy that could suck the air out of a room, but he made my mom happy. That was enough for me. Ron came with baggage, though. His kids from his first marriage, Caden and Lila, were in their late 20s, just like me. Lila was fine, quiet, polite, and kept to herself. But Caden? That guy was a walking headache. From the very first moment I met him, I knew we wouldn't get along. At dinner, he kept making jabs at me, calling me the golden boy because I had built a small but successful real estate business in Omaha. It wasn't much, but I was proud of it. Meanwhile, Caden was still living at home, hopping between half-baked startup ideas that never went anywhere. He liked to act like he was better than everyone else, but it was clear he resented anyone who had their life together. I should have seen it coming, honestly. But you never think someone like that could actually do serious damage. Fast forward 6 years. By 35, I had worked my ass off to grow my real estate business. I wasn't rich, but I had built a solid reputation. I had connections all over Nebraska and parts of Iowa, developers, contractors, investors, buyers, you name it. My contact list was everything. My assistant Lisa and I had spent years organizing it into a system that worked seamlessly. That list was the reason I could close deals quickly and why people trusted me to handle their properties. It was my lifeline. Caden, on the other hand, was still living with Ron and my mom. He had started calling himself an entrepreneur, though it was mostly Ron's money funding his latest ventures. Every time I visited my mom, he'd throw some snide comment my way, something about how real estate wasn't a real business or how I was lucky to have easy money. I'd laugh it off, thinking it was harmless jealousy. I didn't realize how deep his bitterness ran. It all came to a head one Friday night. I had just closed a massive deal with a developer who was looking to build a new neighborhood outside of Omaha. It was one of those deals that could really take my business to the next level. My mom insisted I come over for dinner to celebrate. I should have said no. The moment I walked into their house, I could feel Caden's hostility. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone with that smug look he always had when he thought he was better than everyone else. I ignored him and focused on the rest of the family. Ron opened a bottle of wine, my mom cooked her famous roast, and for a while, it felt normal. But then, as we were finishing dessert, Caden piped up. "So, Mason," he said, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place, "you really think you're untouchable, huh?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You walk around acting like you're some big deal," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But you're just a small-town nobody. Real estate? Please. Anyone can sell a house." I forced a laugh, trying to diffuse the tension. "Well, clearly not everyone, or you'd have a job by now." That hit a nerve. His face darkened, and he smirked. "Yeah, we'll see how long your little empire lasts." I brushed it off as just another one of his cheap shots. I wish I hadn't. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. I grabbed my phone to check my emails, but nothing was loading. My calendar? Empty. My contact list? Completely gone. At first, I thought it was some kind of technical glitch. I called Lisa, hoping she could fix it, but the panic in her voice told me otherwise. "Mason, your account's been wiped," she said. "Even the backups. Everything's gone." I froze. "What do you mean, gone? That's not possible." "It looks like someone deleted it on purpose," she said quietly. That's when it hit me. Caden. The smug comment from the night before, the way he always hovered around people's laptops and phones, it all made sense. My stomach dropped. I drove straight to my mom's house. I didn't care that it was early or that I probably looked like a maniac. When I stormed inside, Caden was sitting at the kitchen table, eating cereal like he didn't have a care in the world. "You," I shouted, pointing a finger at him. "What the hell did you do?" He looked up at me, chewing slowly. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I yelled. "My business, my contacts, everything's gone. Did you do this?" His smirk returned. "Prove it." I lost it. I lunged at him, grabbing him by the collar. "You think this is funny? You've ruined me." Ron pulled me off him, yelling at me to calm down, but I couldn't. Caden just stood there, brushing himself off like I was beneath him. "Good luck rebuilding your little empire," he said, his voice mocking. "You'll never get those contacts back." The next few days were a nightmare. I tried everything to recover my data, but it was gone. Years of work, hundreds of carefully built relationships, destroyed in one night. Clients started calling, wondering why I hadn't followed up on deals. Developers pulled out of projects. My reputation was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do except fight back. I filed a police report, laying out everything I knew. At first, it felt like a long shot. But then, the Cybercrime division got involved. They traced the hack back to Caden's IP address. He had accessed my accounts using a keylogger he installed on my mom's computer. The level of detail in their investigation was incredible, and damning. When the cops showed up at my mom's house to arrest him, he had the audacity to act surprised. He screamed at me as they hauled him away, calling me a snitch, saying I had ruined his life. But I didn't care anymore. He had made his choice, and now he was going to face the consequences. When Caden was arrested, I thought I'd feel relieved. I thought seeing him dragged out of my mom's house in handcuffs would give me some closure. But if I'm being honest, it didn't. Not right away. I was still reeling from the damage he'd done. I had lost more than just data. My business was crumbling, my reputation was hanging by a thread, and I couldn't stop thinking about how much work it would take to rebuild everything I had spent years creating. But one thing kept me going, the knowledge that Caden wasn't going to get away with it. For once, his arrogance and stupidity had caught up to him. The investigation into Caden was thorough. The police found all the evidence they needed on his laptop and phone. He had been watching me for months, logging into my accounts using stolen passwords and deliberately sabotaging my business. The worst part? He had screenshots of my contact list saved, along with emails he had sent pretending to be me to scare off my clients. He didn't just delete my data, he actively tried to ruin my relationships with people who trusted me. I was furious. Every time I thought about the lengths he went to, I wanted to scream, but instead of lashing out, I put all my energy into making sure he paid for it. I worked closely with the investigators, providing every piece of evidence I had. I made sure the prosecutors knew exactly how much damage he had done, not just to my business, but to my life. The trial was a circus. Caden, true to form, tried to play the victim. His lawyer claimed he had mental health issues and that he was just acting out of frustration. They even tried to blame me, saying I had provoked him by being condescending and unfairly successful. But the evidence didn't lie. The emails, the keylogger, the deleted backups, it all painted a crystal clear picture of what Caden had done. And when the prosecution laid it all out in court, even Ron and my mom couldn't defend him. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face when the judge read the guilty verdict. She looked broken, torn between her love for her stepson and the realization of what he had done. When the sentence was handed down, 15 years in prison for cybercrime and fraud, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, peace. But the story doesn't end there. Even from prison, Caden tried to worm his way back into my life. A few months after his sentencing, I started getting letters from him. At first, they were angry and full of blame. He accused me of ruining his life, of turning our family against him. He called me every name under the sun. I didn't respond. I didn't even read half of them. Then, the tone changed. The letters started to sound remorseful. He apologized for what he'd done, said he didn't know what he was thinking, begged me to forgive him. He wrote about how hard prison was, how he was learning his lesson, how he wanted to make amends. He even tried to use my mom as a middleman, asking her to convince me to write back. I ignored every single one. I wasn't interested in his apologies or his excuses. He had made his choices, and now he was living with the consequences. Rebuilding my business was one of the hardest things I've ever done. For months, I worked around the clock, reaching out to every client, contractor, and developer I could think of. I explained what had happened, reassured them that I was back on track, and slowly started to earn back their trust. It wasn't easy. Some people never returned my calls. Others flat out refused to work with me again. But little by little, I clawed my way back. And here's the thing, the new version of my business? It's better than it ever was. Losing everything forced me to rethink how I operated. I invested in better security, streamlined my processes, and focused on building deeper relationships with my clients. It took time, years, even, but now, I'm more successful than I ever thought I could be. And Caden? He's still in prison. I hear from my mom every now and then that he's doing okay, but honestly, I don't care. I've moved on. He's just a chapter in my story now, a painful, frustrating chapter, but one that taught me some valuable lessons. The last time my mom asked me to forgive Caden, I told her this: I've let go of the anger, but forgiveness? That's not for him. He doesn't deserve it. She looked sad, but she didn't push me. She knows I'm right. So, yeah. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes the people closest to you can do the most damage. But you don't have to let them win. You can fight back. You can rebuild. And if you're lucky, you can come out the other side stronger than ever.